say good evening and welcome. Happy National Poetry Month. My name is Drea Douglas. I am the learning coordinator here at the North Bend Public Library. And we have a fantastic concert today. We have Tom Mitchell, Albert Garcia, and Patricia, oh my Lord, I just forgot your last name.
Clark.
Clark.
Yep, no E.
Let me start again. No, because Tom has a new book out, I said, hey, would you like to? And hey, National Poetry Month, we could do this. We could really celebrate this. And he agreed and said he'd like to invite some friends along. I certainly agreed to that. Tom has done this before. When we've had live, and we've had virtual, and it's whatever we have, we're happy to have people come, and we're happy the poets are here. And the good thing that has happened with virtual, I don't want to say the good thing that's happened with COVID, but the good thing that's happened with the virtual poetry, with the virtual concerts of any type, is being able to see people from all over. And Albert is in Sacramento, Patricia is in Eastern Michigan, and
Western.
Here, Western, you're Western.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm even seeing it in my head, Western.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're this side of the mitten.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good at this. Anyway, let's move on. We're starting tonight with Albert Garcia, and I want to share my screen for a moment and show you something.
Oh, cool.
He sent us a couple pictures that we could use. And this is, I'm assuming this is Albert. Yes, it looks like him. And I'm going to assume this is Sacramento. If this is the city college or not, I don't know. But Albert, can you tell me where you are? And are those the mountain, the Sacramento hills behind you?
No, actually, that's over by San Francisco.
Oh.
So
now we know.
Nice.
you travel all the way to San Francisco at times. Okay.
Nice shadows though on the ground from the fence. That's a good picture.
Yeah, that's really lovely. That is just so lovely. Our last poetry concert, we had this lovely picture from a woman in Greece, and it was the definition of sun-drenched. And that same picture of Albert shares a lot with that. And so I wanted people to see that. And Albert is come here, where are you? There you are. He is the author of 3 books. If you're here, you probably know most of this better than I do. He is the vice president of instruction at Sacramento City College, which is why it was a good thought on my part that was Sacramento. Mm-hmm. And let me see, Rain Shadow, Skunk Talk, and A Meal Like That are 3 poetry books he has published. And I do like the title of A Meal Like That. And I don't know what we're going to hear, but without any further ado, let's hear from Albert Garcia.
thanks to all of you for tuning in right now and from all over. Thanks to Terry and my relatives, my sister Rebecca and my cousin Amy, all on one screen. That's nice to have. Anyway, I really do want to thank Drea and the North Bend Public Library for hosting this. Let me see, Martha, I think you were asking in the chat where the North Bend Public Library is. It's in North Bend, Oregon, on the coast, right by Coos Bay. I had the pleasure of reading at the library a few years ago with Tom. And anyway, this is a different kind of experience. You know, the in-person readings have their benefit, I suppose, and online it's nice because you can get people from anywhere. So anyway, I really appreciate your hosting it, Drea, and I am really very honored and happy to be reading with Patricia and Tom, longtime friends from the writing world and meeting at the Associated Writing Programs Conference many years. Also, and I'm not sure if this will come up in one of the bios, but we're all graduates of the University of Montana MFA program. So different years, but we all have that, that tie as well. So I'm going to start by reading a poem that actually was requested by Drea. I don't want to forget it, and I'm not sure why you requested it, Drea, but I'm going to read it anyway. It's not one that I typically read, but you know, we poets don't get that many requests, so we might as well try to be accommodating, right? Okay, so the poem is called Cussing in the Fourth Grade. I don't know if you remember the fourth grade, but the fourth grade being that an age when you grow up, right? Or you think you're grown up, or something like that. Cussing in the fourth grade. As we expected, it made us more mature. We roamed the playground, impressing all who would listen with our hells and goddammits, our suddenly sage observations made emphatic by impeccable adult diction we'd learned from older brothers. When my buddy Pat saw a skinny kid fall from the monkey bars, he said poetically, "Bitch and dismount." I was a novice, but still able to praise my friend's killer jump shot. Damn, I said. And again, damn. We learned syntax and rhythm. We learned to push out our chests and wave our arms in important gestures. Nothing could stop our wit and charm as we egged each other on, ignoring Sister Carolita's stern warnings not to take the Lord's name in vain. Sure, I got smacked by my mom. The principal paddled Pat till he swore he'd never swear again. But we were now part of another order, those who knew the dirty alley and back door of our language, who could praise, who could cut, who could sing down the halls across the blacktop beyond. I'm hoping my internet holds out. I'm at home with less reliable internet than I usually have, well, than I have at work. I actually drove to work this afternoon, about a 35-minute drive from my house, got into the building and discovered that there was no power. And so turned around, drove home, and was happy to get on in time for the reading. I'm going to read a poem called Tomatoes on Interstate 5. Trucks roll down I-5, trailers full of tomatoes. Almost always, they'll spill a few as they round a corner, hard, small fruit bouncing over asphalt, a bright scattering of red on the road's shoulder of star thistle and tarweed. Maybe you left the house angry over an argument with your wife, words in the air like a whining fan belt. Maybe you're headed down the freeway because it's the fastest way out of town and you're suddenly sick of the same streets and just have to drive to something new. You're in the car, mind dulled by the flatness of rice fields, their green monotony, when somewhere in your vision's periphery, a pheasant coasts over the road, almost hitting the big rig in front of you. The trucker taps his brakes and it happens, spilling, filling your view, tomatoes bouncing around your car in a flash of color so sudden you wonder if this is real or if it's something else that's made your pulse quicken, your grip tighten on the wheel. In the rear view, you see them roll onto the shoulder's hot gravel and you can't help it. You keep glancing in the mirror, feeling lucky, wanting to say something though no one is sitting beside you. And you drive until the small red dots are gone and the road bends into the dreary gray grove of olives. When Patricia, Tom, and I are at these conferences, there's a conference, of course, but importantly, there are many nice meals. And so I thought I would read a food poem, a poem about a meal. This particular meal, well, it's not a conference meal, but But anyway, I don't know, for some reason it seemed appropriate. Would this poem can be, depending on what you like to eat, a little offensive to some people.
Albert, we may have lost you.
I think he froze.
I think he did. Albert?
No, you're muted. No, you're muted, Albert.
Thanks, Martha. Okay, I'm back. More or less composed.
We heard nothing of that poem.
Well, I didn't read the poem. I was just babbling on about it. And then, so anyway, this is a poem about food, a poem about a meal, a poem that could potentially, depending on what you eat, offend you. Okay, so I'll say that. The poem is called Fat. Hopefully the internet will hang in there while I'm reading. Fat. When her meal came, she sliced a wedge of fat from her prime rib and pushed it to her plate's rim, where it sat glistening and oily, soft and translucent. I still remember how she nudged it past her foil-wrapped potato, out of the blood juice pooled around the medium rare meat. "You're beautiful," I said. She said, "You always say that. Come up with something better." The Syrah went well with thick slabs of beef. Our talk swirled around the candle between us. As her eyes searched mine for what she wanted, my eyes settled on the remains of her cold meat, potato skin, 2 spears of asparagus, and that strip of fat, now white, now gelatinous, and always something I, not she, would swallow. The poems that I've read so far from my book called A Meal Like That, I'm going to switch to my book called Skunk Talk and read a poem that I thought might be appropriate because Patricia's husband Stan is a painter and my wife Terry is a painter. So I'm going to read a poem about painting or about observing somebody paint. The poem is called I Watch You Paint. After stretching wet paper overboard, washing in the first gray hues, leaving white where the man and woman will stand, you step back and squint. I like this, watching you imagine, seeing the picture by looking at your eyes and the muscles of your face. You mix another layer of wash and another, and soon it's nearly complete, and I'm seeing it as if with blurred eyes. But you see more. You're bleeding magenta into the man's shirt. The woman's black hair crosses her face, and you scratch it with a knife for highlights. Your brow creases. I see now the man's hand is on her shoulder. There is wind. Her white dress blows tight against her body. I want to ask you what is happening, but it seems the wind is in you. And now what? You've got a needle to pick the dry pigment from the man's eye, leaving a tiny white dot on his pupil, which, though small, now makes me realize he has the very expression I sometimes get when I'm angry. You hate that look, but there it is in the man's eyes, and now your brush dashes around in his hair. I haven't spoken for hours. The man clearly is losing the woman. You've washed a darker gray into the sky. Finally, you sit back and look across the room. Then you glance at me, and it seems I haven't seen you in years. I say, the painting is sad. You say, it's not finished. This next poem is called Framing. A poem about my mother. Framing. A breeze moves through the house. Here are your fingers prying back cardboard tabs that hold the simple gold frame's small pane of glass. Your fingers laying in the photo of you, your smiling sister, and a Jersey milk cow, a picture that radiates her blonde hair and that day's light too brightly. Why do you hang this on the hallway wall, this reminder of a grief so intense your red-knuckled hands tremble 60 years later as you level, amid portraits and wedding pictures, the frame in its black and white image? Can you still smell that morning, lemon blossoms and dew and the earthy musk of the Jersey, just days before your sister fell ill, a simple ear infection turned to pneumonia? Do you still feel the weight of the blue spring sky, suddenly as immense as God, a sky you looked to for comfort, under which you found only yourself, now the oldest, now the one daughter? Do you even see yourself in the picture, or is it all her, the way a windy meadow is all wind pulling at you? Okay, I'm going to go with another food poem. It's a little bit of a lighter poem to move the mood off that last poem. This poem is called Fig. I tend to write about fruit a lot too. We grow a fair amount of it, and I like to eat it. Always have. So, and one of my favorite fruits is a fig. Fig. When we tear through its skin, it looks like flesh with seeds, or the tender insides of a sea anemone, soft, red, something to relish for its fine, damp texture. Insects like them too. Once, driving Highway 99, the morning behind us and a hot glare of sunlight, I bit into that moist sweetness, opened my mouth, and exhaled a fog of fruit flies, creating a kind of marvel, something we'd laugh about for years, my breath casually born as tiny winged creatures that longed for nothing short of what we all want, to be fed, enveloped. I'm a little more careful eating figs now. I still love them, but I'll usually break them open with my hands first, my fingers. We just finished recently finished in my mind, the most exciting sporting event of the year, which is the NCAA basketball tournament. So I'm going to read a sports poem, a little bit of a newer poem called Basketball. When you lift it, flattened off the garage floor, the dusty remains of desiccated insects coat your fingers, which want only what the ball used to be: perfect bounce, palm to pavement, over and again, an energy you could feel from fingers to wrist, your whole body accommodating the seamless response. How you cradled that ball each time it leaped up, allowing it, receiving it, palm wide and soft, taking in, giving out, reciprocating, understanding, knowing. And now, alone in the corner of your garage, holding it with two hands like something you'd lost, tiny nubs long gone, worn smooth, like something you once loved, once knew so well it returned without thought. Is it worth the needle, the hand pump, the longing you'd employ to breathe into it new life? Some poems are really fun to write. That was a fun poem to write. I don't know. I just really enjoyed trying to capture what dribbling is. you know, and how those who do it well do it without thinking. So the ball is almost a part of their body. I've also started a new series of poems. I don't know how long this series will be, but I've started some poems about tools. So I have a poem called Pitchfork. It could be in a horror movie, shoved between shoulder blades. When the steel tines reach the innocent schoolboy's lungs, he gurgles blood from his lips and dies with his glossy eyes open. My life isn't that kind of movie. As I turn the compost heap of leaves and grass clippings, coffee grounds, banana peels, eggshells, I can't figure out my season's plot. I am not romantic about this litter decomposing, cooking in its own warmth, turning to dark soil. I'm pleased to see the earthworms doing their work, but I feel nothing aside from the dull ache at the base of my back. I do like looking at the tines, how they shine at their tips, how they slide easily into the waste of my living. I like the lone maple leaf pierced, hanging on as if it could avoid the simmering pile. I like the well-worn handle, how it feels under the cracked leather of my gloves, how it slides through my grip, which tightens and releases ever so slightly, according to the easy drama of my days. This next poem is, it came, sometimes as poets, we give ourselves exercises, right? You know, and this exercise was, I want to, Martha, this will get you thinking probably. This exercise was at the moment to describe my experience at work, just purely in metaphor. Not talking about the literal work at all, but figuratively the whole way. So the poem is called The Vastness of Seawater. A freighter scrapes against a sleeping whale and cuts into its thick blubber. Nobody on board notices the slight bump. Even the captain in the wheelhouse dozes along in the tranquility of the North Atlantic sun, his instruments set, his course definitive, if known only to him and the man in port who signs the checks. Or maybe the captain notices something, but asks himself if it was just his imagination, that thud, that small lurch starboard, while the whale dives, trailing a stream of blood that mixes with the vastness of seawater and is gone, a long white scar already developing, cross-hatching with other scars, old scars, painful in ways only the whale will know as it rises for the air it barely breathes. And I'm going to end with a poem called Hummingbird. We have quite a few of those around, and they're common enough everywhere, I suppose. Hummingbird. That morning you found the hummingbird on the shelf in the shed, wings extended, completely desiccated, dead, perfect in its iridescence and dust. You cupped it gently in your palm, carried it into the kitchen, placed it in a white dish, and set it on the countertop. It sits there now, a month later, black needle beak just lying there, nowhere near the honeysuckle's deep center, or even the crude yellow and red feeder with colored sugar water the neighbor hangs from her porch. We should bury this bird or just toss it out, but you haven't, and neither have I, each of us sensing how rare it is to catch splendor at a glance, struck each time we go to the cupboard for a water glass, wanting the softness of those feathers, their shine for whatever they offer in the quiet limits of our lives. Thank you very much.
Albert, thank you. And thank you, Albert's internet connection, for holding on. And
It didn't give out in the middle of the poem, I don't think.
No. And I don't know why you don't read the cussing in the 4th grade. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Tom and I were talking ahead about how, poetry needs to be read aloud. And that one I'm sure would be fine on the page, but no, say that one every day. That's my own personal preference.
Thanks.
Patricia Clark is next, joining us from Western Michigan. I'm assuming that you can see the lake from where you live. Nope, oh, you're muted. Let's unmute you. Nope. I cannot, you will have to unmute yourself, I'm afraid.
That's fine.
There.
Yeah, no, the lake is about a half an hour or 40 minutes from us, so too bad.
There's not another lake you can use?
Maybe.
Patricia recently retired after 30 years, goodness, teaching at the writing department at Grand Valley State University in Michigan. She is also the author of, what a great title, Self-Portrait with $1 Million. And why, you happen to have a copy of it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will you be reading from that today?
Yes.
Thank you. Please, Patricia.
It's really nice, Drea. Thank you for corralling us cats. And it's a pleasure to read with Albert and Tom. We've never read together. We've gone to that conference 1 million times, and well, maybe not 1 million, but Albert describes it well. And we do attend the conference, but we also eat some great food there. So I thought I kind of organized what I was going to read. You'll be happy to hear that, I guess. And recently on PBS, they did a movie version of the E.M. Forster novel, Howard's End. And I'm a big fan of E.M. Forster, and I love that book. And I liked the version that they did. And there's a famous quote from that book, "Only connect." And I think about that when I chose poems for tonight. I write a lot about nature, and I feel sometimes that makes people yawn immediately and think, oh no, not another tree. But I'd like to think there's other things going on, and I hope you'll see so too, because there's a lot of connections, even with a tree, in ways that I think we maybe take for granted. So I'll start with a poem about river birches. We had some on campus right near the building where I worked, and I didn't know what they were. And we had a university arborist, so he was really nice. You could write him an email and say, what's that tree? And he knew everything. So this is called Coveting the River Birch. Because the bark peels off, it flays itself and allows the inner surfaces to be seen and known. A papery bark that is white on the outside. Peeled back, the inner surface has a blush or peach color, an admission of how private this side is. 3 birches in one group, 2 in the other. To stand together is to shield oneself a bit from scrutiny. I could be that brave, peel back and show, after years on guard, finally open to bracing touch. I'm not a big fan of spiders, and yet I seem to have an inordinate number in my poems of late. And my mother was a really good example. She would say never to kill a spider that was in the house, that they're really good and you should rescue it and take it outside. And so I do, except my one rule is if if a spider startles me in the shower when I'm naked, all bets are off and I might just smash it to smithereens. So this is called Every Spider I Save Could Be the Instrument. Outside the glass, there's a red spider climbing the chain of its web up and down, plus sometimes swinging sideways like a tiny Tarzan action figure, except it is not Tarzan, but a red spider about the size of a peppercorn before you put it in the red pepper grinder, turning the handle to make the black bits of it fall onto your food, adding to it zest, giving it a little bite. Earlier, another spider, this time black, startled me as it crawled the kitchen sink. I surprised myself by saving its life, putting my favorite gray and black cup over it, using the lawyer's bill in a stiff envelope to slide under it. Then I took it outside to a new home on the hostas, the lawyer's bill for amending our wills, listing 2 of my nieces to speak for us when we are unable. I'd rather be bitten fatally by a large spider, either in our house, our bed, or maybe in the garden, rather than ending up in one of those places with wheeled chairs and walkers lined up like fake chariots. Oh, spider, be the instrument of my death, dispatching me to the afterlife of grass clippings, spent tulips, pruned rose canes, oak leaf debris by the ravine's moist, delicious lip. That might sound a little perverse, but hey, it's what poets do. Think about things. Sometimes it's something in the news that kind of troubles you, bothers you. And one of the rules I have is, if it's still bothering me in a couple of days, then maybe I'm meant to write a poem about something. And this was a story. I'm from the Pacific Northwest originally. That's how I guess I got to know Tom and Albert and connect to University of Montana. So this is called After Reading About the Orca and Its Calf. Maybe it isn't salt water that heals, my mother's theory, but the mere going down to the sea, removing your shoes, a way of humbling yourself before forces larger than, deeper than, stronger than. Once I body surfed in Lake Superior. When a wave smashed me, I crawled out of the water. Maybe it isn't that we're cruel. If we believe that all the other creatures hurt too, what a weight of grief. I regret killing the spider on the gray dashboard of my car. It looked for a home. The Seattle Times said the orca carried her calf for a week, refusing to let the dead thing go. Finally, she let the sea take it. The Great Lakes are this amazing thing here. Before I moved to Michigan, I kind of knew where Michigan was, but the Great Lakes, I didn't know much about. And you ought to come and take a look because they are amazing and they're like seas, they're like oceans. And sadly, a lot of people who come to the lakes aren't aware that how dangerous they can be, riptides and other things. And in the summer, there's a terrible number of people who drowned. And of course, you've heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald, that boat that went down years ago. So one summer, I got very haunted by some of the drowning victims, and I wrote this poem. And the title, Threnody, is basically kind of an elegiac song. So, Threnody. You never had a chance to speak, pressed under and down by weight of water. Bend close to me now and listen. Sometimes you toiled at work, oiler, deckhand, captain, mate, pulled down in a fight to save your ship on blizzard seas, ore carriers plowing thick waves on the Great Lakes, those inland waters where a fetch builds up intensity crossing 300 miles of open water, ships racing to get in a last voyage, ice gripping the gunnels, the rudder and prow. Or you were driving home, highway a lit ribbon through cornfields, past dunes, jostling in the car with your friends. Who suggested a quick swim in Lake Michigan? Did you three feel a thrill as you splashed into cold water? Can anyone answer why you didn't know what a red flag flying above the beach meant and how to escape? Girl, the newspaper carried your photo days until they found your body. Or you kicked your way in, racing to save someone, desperate to reach your own child or a sister, brother, in water so shallow you could see white sand at the bottom. Did it comfort you at all, unable to loosen small fingers from your arms or neck, that you'd go down together? Music along the shore, wind that moans, passing lighthouse, jetty, snow fence, shoreward pines, and pebbles rolling in the surf, colliding, roaring, hitting. I wonder if you see now that words are not enough to bring you back from the other side. Sand mixes with the lake, becoming clay, becoming ash. Along the high water mark, discarded items of the lost, bracelet, shoe, particle of a life, a song, word, note. If we ask, do not haunt us, do not come again. We have heard you, voices from the deep. Now we let you go. Now I should have a real funny one. Thank you. Just a little backyard scene here with a butterfly. This is called Ragged. Warm wooden leg of a table, August sun, and the red admiral staying there, flexing its wings, yellow pear tomatoes turning gold hour by hour, and the woods still green, but somehow more somber each day. Though I try staying just here in this moment, breathing, watching, living. What part of us wants to measure or compare? This year against last, this year's tomato yield over last. I lean back in the red chair, soaking up heat. I touch the dog's black, silky ear. We are specks in this speck of time. Tonight, the Perseids. We whirl together just for now. This dance, this stardust, light on a wing. Sometimes, I guess in a way, it kind of relates to things Albert was saying, but sometimes you start writing and it's amazing how something that you're looking at that's real takes on other significance and becomes metaphoric in a way that you didn't plan for. And that makes you really happy as a poet, I think. This one is called Mallards at Rest. The woods regal in copper, russet, gold, and the air seemingly spun gold, though it's November. Over planks of the bridge, we cross the lagoon, where down below, along water's edge, mallards have tucked wings, feathers, and heads. Only green on their crowns shows. I know any moment they could startle up into ducks. For now they linger as feathers over warm bodies asleep in a world easily able to harm them. Like sleeping children or any group of innocents, let them rest for now. the dispossessed, lost, astray, wayward travelers, who, if they can find peace for a nap in shade, let them be. I want to read the title poem and then just 2 more poems. Am I okay? I think I am. Yeah. So the title poem, Self-Portrait with $1 Million. Well, the story is in the poem, so I won't tell you that. Just that I got really obsessed. It was long ago. It was when they had World's Fairs. And my father very kindly agreed to take us out to see this caravan pass. So this is called Self-Portrait with $1 Million. Near a painted boulder with names of teams, high schools, sits the exit we take now to the graves. Near the hill, scotched broom gold, that roaming place, the sometimes swamp where I see myself with my small brothers, 3 of us holding hands. Near the heart of it all, the family whole, before anyone was sundered. Though Anne was about to leave us, I glimpsed her outside, leaning over to kiss a boy in a red car. It was so long ago, there weren't zip codes or cell phones or the internet, and the World's Fair was in Seattle, our grandmother flying in elegant hat and white gloves from Boston. Muscle memory holds so much, landscape memory too. That overpass, exit, boulder, hill, with a convoy motoring west. How for months I begged Father to take us to see it. $1 million in silver dollars coming out of the east, a police escort guiding it to the fair. Near the railing, next to Father, I stood watching while a semi blew past, dirt kicking up pollen, road dust, freeway still being built. A motor parade gone in an eye blink. I hadn't understood. I'd never see a single silver gleaming coin. Now they did put them on exhibit at the fair, so you could go. And they were, I don't know, in piles. I think I was obsessed with money and those coins. So 2 more. Sometimes I look at field guides for birds or trees or all kinds of things. And honestly, whoever writes some of these field guides, sometimes it's sheer poetry, the things that birds make their nests out of. It's impressive. So I try and steal as much as I can. The less work you have to do as a writer. I think Tom shaking his head, he agrees. This is called Wood Eternal, about a really cool tree. I didn't know what it was, and I took a picture and someone told me it's a bald cypress, but Wood Eternal. When I stood looking out on dormant trees devoid of green, when I saw decomposing leaves turning to bits, the worn path left by hooves of white-tailed deer, when I heard they would bulldoze weeds and bushes where migrating monarch butterflies rest, all to build a wall to keep people out, when the sale of public land to oil barons, to drillers was approved and signed, then my heart grew sore, my breath weak, and I took myself soon to the river, called the dog to me, and we stepped out together. We heard the belted kingfisher rattle its warning and fly ahead of us along the bank. We crossed a bridge where muskrats gamble in water like children and feed on freshwater clams. And we stopped at the bald cypress, now shedding, but strong and stout, with a trunk made of wood eternal, growing there undisturbed by moving water, day after living day. And this is the last poem in the book. And really, if anyone wants a copy, you can always go on to PayPal and put my email in, patriciapoet@gmail.com, and your address. And for $16, I'll sign a book and send it to you very fast. So this is called After Seeing a Fir Down at a Nearby Cemetery. Neither the dead whose graves the tree spans and covers, nor the nearby dead in neat rows, maybe even the relatives, do not care or know. Come Memorial Day, their eyes will open at a cracked headstone. But now the fir's luxurious green softens iron-hard ground, the marble markers toppled, and the trunk lies prone as one of the dead, now joined. Once I told my husband how much Christmas wreaths on graves cheered me, red bows on circles of green. Lay one there for me, I almost said. I don't desire that vaulted dark, permanent as a strut of a bridge, a building's footstep. Burn me and set my spirit free, ash in the ravine or mud of Lamberton Creek or the Grand River. Let flowing water flow and the body's spirit that adored motion, rocking, let it move. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. The problem with Zoom is that, you know, in order to be polite, we mute.
I know.
And then you make sure my hands are up, do the clap wave, or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
I felt it.
Felt it. I hope you'll come someday to North Bend, which is nowhere near Bend. And I would so love to see the three of you live in concert here.
We'll do it. We'll do
Okay.
it.
I'd love it. The coffee will be terrible. I promise you that. Well, we now go to the star of the evening, to the man who's just got a new book out, I believe. Don't you, Tom? From Lost Horse Press. Where We Arrive is Tom Mitchell's newest book of poetry. I've heard a couple from this that he's done. What? Oh, look, someone's got a copy. Ours is sitting in the back room on the cataloger's desk.
Mm-hmm.
But it is there. And next time I see Tom, I will have him autograph it. So, Tom, without further, would you like to be pinned? You'll have to unmute.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for being here. Well, virtually being here. Also want to thank Drea and North Bend Public Library for being such a gracious host. And of course, Albert and Patricia. This is going to be a hard act for me to follow. You both did a wonderful job. I've had this, I'm becoming more and more aware I have this affinity with water. And water sort of flows in and out of my poems. I'm originally from the East Coast. I was born on Long Island. And so I spent a lot of time on Long Island Sound. I was in the Navy, so I was in the North Atlantic. I was in Corpus Christi on the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, I live about a mile away from the Pacific. And so it's natural, I think, for me to sort of incorporate that into my poetry. And so I kind of grouped 4 poems that they all sort of revolve around water. And the first one is called Kayaking, Long Island Sound. I'm strolling along the beach this cold, bleak morning. Pale seagrass bending in the wind, when there, up ahead, in the lustrous surf, I see a kayaker, sleek as a seal, cutting through the waves, lifting his paddle to the broken sunlight. I'm approaching 73, agile as an easy chair. But this is where my longing starts, the yearning for another life, the one where I'm lean and muscular, where I shoulder my kayak, stride into the waves, and in one fluid movement, lift myself into the seat, then over the breakers. I'm waiting for the vessel to right when I'm pulled through a series of surging rifts, water brimming across an invisible bow. The kayak moving on its own accord, then settling into a more even flow. I dip the paddle, counterbalancing my weight, leaning into the sea's wake, now one with the kayak. Wind at my back, paddling through a spitting drizzle in an endless straight line as I push through emerald chop into a plateau of silence. This is when it gets good. The sun comes out and turns the sea a radiant blue. 3 pelicans rattle by on their way to somewhere. All right.
Tom, I'm going to interrupt momentarily just to see if you can tilt your screen down just a little, because sometimes we're not getting your full face. That's going to do it. I think that's going to do it.
Is that it?
Yeah. Thank you.
This is one of the little, this little poem just sort of came along, you know, we ask ourselves, wow, where did that come from? And it's called The Weight of Water. This morning, the lake moves in small measures, like the young girl inching along the shoreline, gathering gifts, cast off pine cones, husks, a strand of salmon berries. The lake is moving almost imperceptibly into late afternoon as the girl lifts a handful of water with its clear mountain fragrance. And on it goes, while castings from a young rattler shake in the evening breeze. Dazzling dragonflies flicker in the sputtering light until her fingers grow cold, fingering objects of desire, and she cannot feel what she holds. Okay, most of you can't see this, but this is actually a group of poems called Water Messages. And there's an epigraph at the beginning, and it goes like this. How should we know what is coming to pass within us when there are no words to grasp it? How could the drops of water know themselves to be a river, yet the river flows on? Antoine Saint-Exupéry. So there's like, whoa, there's 6 different parts to this. So I'll pause in between each one. This morning, in the gentle light of the living room window, I read that Japanese scientist, Dr. Masaru Emoto, is studying the practice of listening to water. Well, I thought, I'm not the only one, as I looked across the bay, where small boats were shifting with the tide and a handful of gulls swirled. I asked myself, is this why my sadness comes and goes? Why even happiness eventually wanes in cycles as natural and unpredictable as the sudden turning of a boat? Long fingers of water filling the empty tidelands. A day later, I'm driving down Highway 101, watching whitecaps on the storm-racked sea drifting eastward toward Japan. Only yesterday, The sun was reflecting a smooth glaze over the gentle water. My mind is like that. When it's agitated, it lacks clarity. And when it settles, things become clear in an instant. I feel myself calming down, my thoughts becoming more vivid. I become more aware that I want to write. A great gray heron lifts her wings, quietly glides along the horizon. As I walk the beach at Seven Devils Wayside, the surf is huge and powerful, overwhelming. I think back to Kauai, watching the canoes negotiate the surf. Isn't it wonderful the way they paddle out every morning, disregarding the waves? Their longboats maneuvering as if on their own, delicately balanced by the tipping brace bars, skimming over big waves, little waves, creating their own wake, water rising to the brims, then flowing back until in the distance they look like tiny insects, water speeders before they disappear. It's late. I'm sitting in my rattan chair, holding a cup of coffee, musing over 2 red dragons on my mahogany desk. In Buddhist practice, when water fills a cup, it becomes one with the cup, but it's still water. Together, they become in unison, a cup and water, sharing their shape, but still stone and water. In relationships, when water fills a cup, it becomes one with the cup, but it's still water. If the cup is broken, the cup is no longer a cup, but the water remains water. Water is movable, changeable, adaptable, just as our emotions should be. Looking over the bay, it's a wonder to see a skiff gliding toward the sun, a steady keel together with its sails billowing with each rush of wind. 8 a.m. The morning fog is holding, yet I hear geese flying overhead. The pond's water is still and silent, although beneath the surface, mosquito larvae perform their strange ballet, stretching and curling in every direction. Tiny fish dart like meteors in a feeding frenzy. There are so many times when truth is hidden. At night, city lights make it hard to see the stars, but I know they're there. Okay, this next poem is called China Bowl. And I like to spend a lot of time walking the beaches here. And I find myself at times gazing out to the sea and wondering what's beyond. And so that's kind of what this poem is about. It does some strange transitioning, but let me read it. I think you'll get the idea of what I mean. China Bowl. Along the trail, foxglove in rows like candelabra. Pink here, white there, until they end abruptly at the end of a stand of Douglas fir. The sky expands westward, carrying veils of cirrus clouds toward China, where perhaps a fishmonger is filleting a red snapper to sell at market. Every once in a while, pausing to wipe the blood from his right hand, then surgically removing the spine in one masterful stroke. His daughter is balancing a pinwheel. In one hand, an ornate porcelain bowl in the other. Colorful red and yellow streamers shift jubilantly in the wind. He has a 9-hour advantage over me. I'm just beginning to adjust my eyes to the early sunlight, peeking over the hillside as a snail crosses my path, dragging its grotesqueness, gray and filmy, along with its amber shell, leaving a silver trail. I can't see around the bend, but the sound of crows catches my attention. There are so many things that happen in this world, ones that I can remember and others I can't forget. Across the Pacific, the fishmonger is assembling a delicate row of snails, admiring their uniform beauty, the sheen of evening light pouring over their shells, then awakens to the little girl's astonishment as the porcelain bowl shatters. Okay, I've got a couple of poems that have sort of similar themes. And the theme is seeking refuge. And the first one is called Sanctuary. If I had never listened to the counsel of water, heard the icy river, crossed the snowy field against the wind's wake, followed a bobcat's trail into an unsettling whiteness, considered the number of unlit windows sparkling in afternoon sunlight, the lazy farms now just a rambling thought, empty silos full of ghosts, the tap of tree branches, thin veneer of cold clinging to the uppermost tips. I'd wrap myself in mounds of wool, a strident scarf as blue as the sky, then break toward the distant hills beyond the call of villages where no one could find me, and wait for the vigil of the trumpeter swans, moving from one silence to another, the starlings rising in the fields, a red-tailed hawk drifting in absolute loneliness. Okay, and this other poem is called Little Birds. And like a lot of other people, I've been very troubled about what's been happening at our southern border. Clear through the Trump administration and still continuing today. And it just blows me away that children can be put in cages, taken away from their parents. And no matter what your political point of view, I think most people would find that very disheartening. So anyway, Little Birds. And there's an epigraph here too. It is a terrible and inexorable law that one cannot deny the humanity of another without diminishing one's own. In the face of one's victim, one sees oneself. James Baldwin. The same stars as yesterday are still unraveling, blinking their platinum and copper signals through the milieu of time. As the shadow from the chain link fence gathers around them, the children are restless under their silver blankets. A few still awake sob in muted tones. Jose Alejandro Escobar raises the metal cup to Consuela's lip and remembers the Rio Grande, startling water cascading over rocks. His father's words disappearing, then returning in a bubbly ebb. Calance, chavos, que viene la migra. Hurry up, guys, the Border Patrol. It was because of its dawdling that they came, the Border Patrol in their astonishing black uniforms. If it weren't for those damnable starlings and their incessant chatter, their dappled wings sparkling in the sunlight, he knew he could capture them in the pages of his sketchbook. The starlings were scruffed and tawny as they shook their heads at river's edge. So different from the birds back home in Guatemala. The brilliant quetzal robed in turquoise, the keel-billed toucans dipping in the Las Serenas fountain in Antigua. The pink-headed warblers darting in and out of brilliant bougainvillea in the same plaza where even now the cartel and roving gangs spray their unmistakable taggings of red and black. At the border crossing in Juarez, they were told there was no more room. His mother lowered her eyes, and his father admonished Jose, "Never let go of your sister's tiny hand." Now, as early light begins to illuminate the cage, he holds Consuela in his arms, closes his eyes, and again they follow the migrant trail that snakes across the desert. He wears a bandana tucked under his ball cap to protect his face and neck from the scorching sun. His flimsy sneakers are no match for thorny cholla pods that easily pierce foam rubber soles, while ahead he can see a clump of Palo Verde trees providing some rare shade and the comforting sound of his mother's voice. Okay, a little over a year ago, my wife and I packed up our camper and we headed down to the Southwest. And it was an amazing experience. And I didn't know at the time that a whole group of poems would emanate from that. And so I'm going to read 3 more poems, and they're all based on my travels in the Southwest. Actually, the last one is about my brother and his experience in the Southwest. Okay, the first one's called Taking the Long View. Okay, let me see. Am I doing okay with time? Yeah, okay.
We're not going to tell you to stop.
Okay, you better. Taking the long view. Now, while you are asleep, I'm awake on the back deck, watching the moon's pale luster, the pines casting their shadows on the cascades. I simply want to drift to the edges of night, not knowing or remembering my name, not wishing to be seen or unseen, alive only to the movement of an itinerant owl gliding across a field, the acrid scent of smoldering leaves. I've been told that I shouldn't stay up so late. Leaning back in my rattan chair, lighting another cigarette, petting the dogs. Penny stretches along the cedar planks. Sam turns his face upward toward the kitchen window's glow, then eases back into himself. How many times have I studied them, wishing I could forget myself and understand the beauty of their existence. Take the day in stride, take the long view. When I least expect it, a coyote howls in pure delight over the hills. A sudden gasp of wind pulls from the south, brushing across the slender line of trees that follow the river. This next one's called January Morning on the Mesa. This morning, as the first clear sunlight makes its way over the mesa, I walk my dogs through the arroyo where muted sandstone and empty space meet in a convergence of beauty. A mile away at Cathedral Rock, hundreds of crows are floating, rising upward in dark clouds. Sammy turns his head to the west, then whimpers with concern. Penny lifts herself upright from the smooth rock, ears erect, sniffing the cold air. I see the ancient lineage of wolves in their eyes. In half an hour, we reach a canyon where steep slopes quickly climb right into open sky, the horizon broken only by an uneven outline of rim rock. A red-tailed hawk screes before snapping the branch on a desert mesquite, then disappears into the cosmos. As we follow the riverbed's scrawled signature over stained rock, striated veins, hard scrabble, we are walking in unison, almost like the relentless movement of water. The myriad stars that will shine tonight are still invisible, but the moon looms large over the mountains. Okay, and this will be the last poem. So my younger brother is he's a free spirit, and he lives in Colorado, and right now he's up to his snow, and because of COVID, he's sheltering, of course. But year before last, when right before the snow season hit, he traveled down to he took his trailer down to the Southwest and stayed there all winter, just harboring in the heat. And so this is called "He Wakes Up Every Morning to the Bray of Wild Burros." And there's an epigraph from the Bible, Isaiah 35. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad, the desert shall rejoice. My brother writes from his hammock in the desert, says the evening blush has gone from red to magenta, says Yuma's tough terrain is now soft with color, the smell of sage. Sparrows follow one another across the sky. He says this is a place where clouds are easily confused with mountains, where the occasional raptor reminds him of his proper size. He's not afraid of rattlesnakes or being alone. There's a simple satisfaction in the glow of a cigarette, last light of the stars sputtering like a dying campfire. Watching the Chihuahuan moon drift gently away from Jupiter, a saguaro cactus fading into the landscape. And when it's time to dim the lights on his camper, the night wind lulls him to sleep while wild burros scuttle in the underbrush. And he dreams the incomprehensible dream of another day, knowing there's so much to live for, so much one can live without. That's it, folks. Thank you,
And with,
Dre.
thank you. Thank you, Tom, Patricia, Albert. I want to go back to fourth grade and swear a little more now.
Thanks,
There
Dan,
you
for
go.
being here.
Thanks, Drea, and thanks everybody for
Thanks,
for
Drea.
coming.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you, Albert and Tom, and everyone
Likewise,
for
Patricia.
coming. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Absolutely.
From the North Bend Public Library, thank you very much. Have a good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye
Okay.
now.
Take care.
Bye-bye.